Welcome along to this social media session. I'm Ross McCulloch from Third Sector Lab. I'll dive into slides fairly soon. I will also pop the slides in the chat box. Just to say as well, once this workshop is done, it will be available on the Curve, which is part of the Third Sector Lab website. So if you click on the training tab, you can view previous workshops. So that will be in there. I will also open up the whiteboard. Don't worry about it not having access just now. We'll deal with that when we come to it. Excellent. Okay, so you can connect with me on LinkedIn. If there's any questions, we'll have a chance for Q&A during the session. This is a 90-minute session, so we're finishing at 11:30. As I said, it'll be available on the training tab on the Third Sector Lab website afterwards. If you want to connect with me afterwards and ask any questions about any of the stuff, that's absolutely fine. LinkedIn is generally the best place. So you'll find me over on LinkedIn at that link if you click it in the slides, or if you just search for Ross McCulloch on LinkedIn, you'll find me fairly quickly over on there. So we're going to start by talking about a few key principles when it comes to social media, and these apply regardless of size of charity. So obviously I'm showing you a quote here from someone at Macmillan. Do not worry too much about the fact that it's Macmillan. But this concept of more people doing digital, fewer people in the digital team. And what I'd love you to think about is if at the moment you are the sole person who takes responsibility for social media and online comms and marketing, or if everything flows through you, how might you spread out that responsibility? So, what might this look like for frontline managers? What might this look like for your chairperson? What might this look like for your chief exec connecting with decision makers on LinkedIn? So, how do we start to spread responsibility across more people than probably just the person that's in this room? Or if you're lucky enough to have a team, maybe there's a small handful of you. But how do we make social media part and parcel of how people get their job done? And this is one of the key fundamentals that we're going to talk about today is aligning social media with what is in your organizational business plan or your strategy. So, what we're not trying to do is have these things sit separately. So, if you are looking to recruit volunteers and you're a volunteer recruitment manager, how does social media help you do that? If you're a fundraising team, how does social media help you increase fundraising? So, we're trying to move away from vague terms like raise awareness towards actually quantifiable and qualifiable things in our organization. Okay, okay. This is one of the other principles we're going to talk a wee bit about today. Less is more. Um, so what we mean by this is less channels, less audiences, and less content types. So moving away from trying to please lots and lots of people. Moving away from trying to spin lots of plates by being active on potentially X and Blue Sky and LinkedIn, and TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, potentially a YouTube channel, then your blog, your website, your newsletter. You get the picture. So how do we get back to the fundamentals of where is our audience? Where have we got the most value to connect with them? And what is the content we've got that's going to offer them the most value within that space? And we're going to talk a wee bit today about this idea that curation is going to form quite a lot of your content, and using that 80/20 rule. For a lot of organizations, curated content will be 80% of the content. So if you work in a youth counselling charity and there's been a really good youth counselling video from an organization based in Canada, and you want to share that on your accounts, that is equally as useful as you creating stuff from scratch. And why this is important is having to create your own content all the time is hugely time consuming. And what we'll tend to find is if we fall into that trap of feeling like we need to create fresh stuff all the time, every single week, we will just churn out slop, whether that is AI generated slop or it's slop generated by ourselves. We'd be better creating high value content and doing it once in a while. So a guide or a how-to video or a long form blog post from a subject matter expert rather than just trying to churn stuff out all the time. So curating will often form much more of your strategy than creating stuff from scratch. You need a role model for each of your channels. So you don't currently have a role model. I'd like to think about what that looks like. So if you're encouraging your chief exec to use LinkedIn to build more connections, what does good look like when it comes to a charity chief exec in the UK? If you are involved in a climate change charity and you know that there's another climate change charity doing amazing stuff with TikTok right now, How might you emulate that and take a similar approach on your account? Maybe there's an individual campaigner on Instagram who's talking about access to outdoor spaces and doing it really effectively, engaging their audience. What might you learn from that and how might you apply that? So for everything that we're trying to do, we're not just necessarily looking at our own sector, we might look in the public sector and commercial sector, individuals as well as organisations, but we need to know what good looks like for each of the channels that we're managing. Taking no risks is a risky tactic. I cannot emphasize this one enough. So, what are the conversations that are meaningful to our audience, to our members, to our beneficiaries? How do we get involved in those conversations meaningfully? How do we take risks without taking the wrong types of risks? And a good policy is going to allow you to do that. And really, what we're thinking about from today is your organisation should have three things. So, you should have a good policy that protects your staff and your organisation. You should have a strategy. That strategy could be a one pager that's aligned to your main organisational strategy. But why are we doing this stuff? Who are we talking to? What are the channels that we're going to be using? And what's the type of content that's going to be useful to them? So, how do we align channels, audience, and content? And some kind of content plan. That could literally be a whiteboard in your office. It could be a shared Outlook calendar. It could be using a planning tool like Sprout Social or Hootsuite or another social media platform. It doesn't need to be overly complicated, but really what we're thinking about is how do we plan stuff out and how do we think about the seasonality of content. So if we are an organisation focused on working with children, families in a local community, we probably have things that happen in Easter time, things that happen in summer, things that happen during term and don't happen during term. How do we build that into the types of content we're creating and how do we engage our audiences based on that? What we don't want to do is just open up our laptop on a Monday and go, Chris, we've not put anything on Facebook for 2 weeks. Let's just say, oh, we've got that thing coming up on Tuesday. Here is a link to that thing we have on Tuesday. Less reactive and more planning. And that also allows you to then react to things as they come into the news or as conversations emerge. We'll talk a wee bit about that as we go through it today. Repurposing content is key. I'll let you read this post from Tim. So, how are you going to repurpose content? How are you going to use that long form guide that already sits on your website and chunk it up to become a 10-week content strategy for your LinkedIn account? How are you going to take informational content and reuse it on TikTok into short form, bite-sized content that's going to be suitable for a younger audience? So we're always thinking about how we repurpose content across our channels and across our accounts. So we're going to try the whiteboard now. And what we're going to do in the Zoom whiteboard, if I can get it to work, but if we can, I'll just use the chat box on Zoom, is really what do we want to decide and discuss today? And we'll open up a conversation in a wee second. We're going to talk about audiences, channels, content, logistics, things that scare you, things that excite you. And really what I'd like to think about is what has brought you to this session today. So what are you trying to do in 2026? What is holding you back? What do you need to learn? What do you need to understand? So I'm going to stop sharing in a wee second. I will try and get the share settings working on this whiteboard. Right, we are having a problem with the whiteboard and the sharing is not working for some reason. But anyway, what we'll do is we will use the chat box on Zoom. This is going to get messy very quickly, but that is okay. That is absolutely fine. So what I'd like us to do, we'll take this kind of turnabout. We're going to look at audiences, channels, content, logistics, talk a wee bit about AI, things that scare you, things that excite you, and then anything else that doesn't neatly fall into those categories. The first thing we're going to talk about is audiences. So if you want to pop in the chat box anything around audiences that you want to cover today. So it could be a really niche audience that you want to connect with, maybe an audience you used to be able to connect with, and maybe you've pulled back from that channel and you're struggling to find them now. So anything around audiences that you want to try and chat about or cover today, pop it in the chat box on Zoom, and we'll try and pick up a couple of those. Brilliant. Some good stuff coming in. So one of the things we're going to look at in a few slides' time is we're going to explore how you think about audiences. We're going to look at the approach from Sarah Winters. So if you've not read her book before, the book Content Design is a really good read. If you're interested in thinking about how do we align what we're doing with content with our audiences. So we're going to look at that in a few slides' time. One of the things, Laura's put a really good point there, how to research audiences. So one of the things I'd love you all to be thinking about after this session, if you've never done it before or had a chance to refresh it, is to sit down as a team and actually map out who your audiences are. Where are those audiences online? So really, as I said before, what we're thinking about doing is how do we align audiences, content, and channels. So if we want to engage with every teacher in South Lanarkshire who works in a high school, where are those teachers online? Now, it might be LinkedIn, it might be Glow, it might be that they all get a clunky newsletter from the local authority, and we need to go and figure out who is the person that manages that newsletter. But we need to be spending time thinking about who our audiences are and where they are online. If at the moment your audiences sit in very vague terms like young people is not good enough. Is it young people living with a specific condition? Is it young people in a geographical area? Young people could be anyone up to age of 25. Is that what you actually mean? So a lot of the time working with organisations, I've found that audiences tend to be far too open and vague. Do not be afraid to kind of really drill down and kind of hone into quite specific audiences that you're trying to connect with. And one of the things I would also say is connecting with young people is very difficult. There is no getting away from it. Even the biggest charities struggle with it. Now, this does not mean don't do it, but if you're a small organisation and young people are not necessarily your core audience, what I'd like to think about is how do we connect more with those people who already have the audience. So if we are a charity looking to connect with young people and we work in Shropshire, who are the three biggest youth work organisations in Shropshire, and how do we build a reciprocal relationship in our social media channels so that they will share our content with their audiences, and also we have audiences that will be useful to them that we can share content with as well. So how do we piggyback on other people's audiences? Um, okay, okay, what else have we got in here? Yep, so targeting organisations, and we'll talk a wee bit about LinkedIn today. Increasingly, I would argue, being seen as a bit of a replacement from that kind of hiatus away from Twitter. It's obviously a very different beast and works in a very different way. But if you're specifically looking to target decision makers in organizations, what will that look like? Barbara, I would also, because you're the person that put this in, I would always urge people to think about when we use terms like target and organizations, who's the person in the organization we want to connect with. So with almost every channel that we're talking about, but particularly LinkedIn, people connect with people. So are we looking to connect with HR directors? Is it heads of finance? Is it chief execs? So when we're thinking about corporate sponsors or new partnerships or potentially our funders, who are we actually trying to connect with? Okie doke, some really good stuff. Nicola's said a really good point. We'd rather focus on putting things on our website. Absolutely. So this session is not about social media being the be all and end all. There is no getting away from the fact that organic reach in social media is much more difficult than it's ever been. And we'll talk a wee bit about what that means in terms of the algorithm today. So at the core, and we've got some training on this on our training page on your website, two things that I would say you all need. A good solid website where that core information is, whether that's advice information or it's simple signposts into your services or it's your contact form or it's donations or it's finding out more about being a corporate partner. You also need a good solid mailing list. Your mailing list is not at the whim of a tech billionaire that will change the goalposts overnight and you have no control over it. So thinking about those two things, a good solid mailing list and a good solid website, and thinking about where social media sits alongside that. Now, the benefit of social media over those other two things is you can go to where your audiences exist and where those conversations exist already. You cannot do that on your own website and on your email because that is your own domain and your own space. Right, channels is the next thing we're going to talk about. So, what are the big channels you're struggling with? So, this could be, do you stay on Twitter? Do you move away? Have you found that Blue Sky engagement has dropped off a cliff? Are you interested in TikTok because some young people in your organization said you should use it? Are you struggling to get your chief exec to use LinkedIn? So, whatever you want to talk about, what do you want to put under channels? Lots of good stuff coming there. So one of the things we're going to look at throughout today's session is we're going to look at lots of content examples for lots of different channels. That does not mean that you should be using all these channels. These are just simply examples. What I'd like you to also think about is if I show you an Instagram example, I'd like you to think about how that might apply to the channel that's most appropriate to you. So might that LinkedIn example apply really well to the Facebook group you manage or to your chief exec's approach to content on LinkedIn? So don't get too bogged down on the channel that I'm showing you aligned to the content. What I would say is I would guess that almost all of you in this room have too many channels. No matter how big your organization is, I would hazard a guess that most of you have too many. Um, I think a good rule of thumb is if you can serve one channel on one audience really well, that is a good place to start, and then think about how you build and grow from there. If you're lucky enough to be like Macmillan and you've got a team, then obviously you can service multiple channels and you can create the content for them. I'd like to think about, do you feel too overwhelmed? Do you feel you're struggling to create enough content for these channels at the moment? Do you feel that you don't have enough of an understanding on the types of engagement you're creating and the impact that you're actually having? If that is the case, then definitely need to take a step back and think about that less is more approach. Um, okay, okay. Right, some really good stuff. I'd encourage everyone else to go and look at the chat as well. Some great stuff coming in there on the chat and Zoom. I've been working with a few organisations at the moment where they're still using X or Twitter as a space to connect, particularly in the political space. There is no getting away from the fact that MSPs, MPs, and councillors across the UK, most of them are still active on X because that's where they'll engage with a lot of their communities. What I would say is a lot of the stuff that you're maybe doing on X to engage with politicians, you'll actually find that you can do that quite effectively on Facebook. And what I mean by that is engaging on politicians' comments or threads on a Facebook page, so that can be really powerful. There are lots of politicians active on Blue Sky, but the level of engagement is pretty minimal, and it tends to be Labour-based politicians more than any other party. Um, a few organisations I worked with who have to do political engagement because it's kind of their bread and butter, have not closed their Twitter account, but they do not actively use it to promote the organisation. They simply use it to get involved in discussions with politicians and other campaigners in that space. So you might want to take a slightly different approach if you're still using X or Twitter, where you are less actively using it, but you understand that that is where a lot of the conversations you need to be involved in are at the moment. What I'd like you to all be thinking about is like, what are the ethical decisions you're taking around everything when it comes to technology? So lots of organizations very quickly moved off Twitter. I understand it. My Twitter account still exists. I deleted every single tweet I've ever sent and I unfollowed every single person. I still have a dormant account there just in case something changes in that space in the future. But those ethical decisions that you took around X, how do you apply them to Meta? How do you apply them to some of the decisions we need to take around AI at the moment? So not thinking about these things in isolation, but what does tech ethics look like in general? We're going to have a workshop on tech ethics coming up in 2026. So if that's something that's of interest to you, do sign up for our mailing list over in the training tab on the Third Sector Lab website, and you'll be the first to know about that. Okay, okay. I will also dive into some of these questions a wee bit later. There's quite a few that are coming in from the chat box. We're going to have someone's mentioned TikTok. A few people have mentioned it as well. There's a slide later on. If you go forward in the slides, I've gathered up kind of 22 examples of good campaigns across TikTok from charities across the UK and beyond. So if you're interested in exploring that, go and have a look at that. The guide which I added from Oscar, and I'll pop that back in, has loads of good examples around channels as well. So I'll pop that in just now. Okay, right. Next one we're going to look at is content. So if anyone wants to pop in any questions or thoughts around content, pop that in just now. So Ailish has put a good point in there, like how do we keep content fresh and not the same? This is a really nice way of engaging your team. So like what are the things that they're interested in social media? What are your competitors doing? What are other people in the space that you're operating in doing? This is also quite a useful way of using AI. So what I would say is like less thinking about AI as a way of just generating tons and tons of content. That can be useful in certain circumstances, but for most of you, it's going to be less useful. What AI is very useful for is drilling down into doing research of content that performs well in your niche for your audience. So if you've not done that yet, it's one of the big things I would urge you to go and do after this call is using AI as a research tool that if I work in a really specific health condition, what are organizations globally talking about in that space right now? What has been high performing content around that? What should we do as a small to medium charity based in Wales with limited budget? And so using AI as a research tool can become really, really effective. Um, okay. One of the things that I would also say is there's some stuff coming in about video content as well. Don't be afraid to post video content that's a wee bit more rough and ready. Um, Particularly shorter form video content. There's some really good stuff in the guide around creating video content. One of the things we're going to look at in the slides later on is this idea of creating search focused video content. So video content that answers questions. And how does that sit alongside some of our storytelling content? One of the types of video content I would urge you all to rethink because it seems to be the kind of classic thing that people do is project promotional video content. Usually it's very long-winded, it's very expensive, takes a lot of planning. Usually you go and bring in an expensive videographer to make it happen, put it up on your YouTube channel and you look at it 2 years later and it's got 125 views. What you'll tend to find is search focused content will do much, much better. If you're looking at an example of a charity that does that well, Scope, I think, do that really well. So they create search focused video content. Go and have a look at Scope's YouTube channel if you're really interested in that. Okay, what about logistics? This is our next one. So pop that in the chat box. So what are you struggling with when it comes to logistics? So managing channels, finding the time. Before everyone puts it in, none of you are going to find any extra time. So I hate to break it to you. There is no additional magic extra time in your week. That's not a thing. So what I'd like you to think about is how does good content on social media and our other digital channels free up time? So how does a good video answer the question that we've had 7 emails this week alone about, and 3 different staff have typed out that information in an email thread. And actually, if we could answer that question in a video really quickly, we wouldn't continually have to do that stuff. So where does social media free up time, not just where does social media add time in our week? Okay. Yeah, getting more staff to post content. If you're interested in this stuff, we've got a kind of approach that we take called Open Working. We created a thing called the Open Working Toolkit, which you can go and have a look at just now. I will put the link in the chat box. It will also go in the resources when we get this training up on our website. And this is the concept of trying to get more people across the organisation to work in the open and using their social channels to do that. I'll not go into too much detail because we've got a whole training program on that, but you can go and explore that in your own time. One of the big things I would say is getting your staff to understand what good looks like is really powerful. So getting your staff to deliver you content 80 to 90% ready and you're putting the finishing touches on it and then getting it live is much more powerful than someone sends you a PDF and says, here's a 24 PDF, make that in a Facebook post. That is a big email thread, or that is a lot of email meetings back and forward. So how do we get staff to get the content to us that is almost ready and we can put the finishing touches on it? Or how do we train our staff and how do we empower them? How do we get more of them to come to workshops like this so that we can trust them to use their own channels and engage effectively? And again, going back to that Macmillan example that I mentioned before, Macmillan do this where people in local areas, so for example, Macmillan have a partnership with Glasgow Life where they have drop-in sessions in libraries in Glasgow for people living with cancer. The people who manage that project manage their own social media accounts. So they're not filtering everything through a London-based social media team to make that happen. Okay, okay, right. Next one we're going to look at, which is obviously something we've talked about already, but thinking about where AI fits into your workflows. Be really good as well if anyone wants to talk about examples of AI that you're using at the moment and where it's saved you time and where you've had real impact. But also if there's anything around AI where you're like, you just don't like it or you find that the output is crap, that would also be interesting as well. Yeah, I would agree with Lorna that at the moment using AI for image generation is a it's I don't know what's a polite way of putting this. It's pretty obvious at the moment. The technology is getting better and better. What I would say is using your own photographs, even if they're not the best things in the world, and using good stock photography from sites like Unsplash, for example, there is enough good content out there, or using a tool like Canva, that we don't need to lean on generating images from AI. I would say there's much better uses of your time when it comes to AI. One of the things that you could be thinking about doing is if you have staff who are not very good at creating content, but they are subject matter experts, using AI tools to understand your approaches to social media, to understand your brand guidelines, your tone of voice, to then help generate content based on their expertise becomes really powerful. So not just typing in, I want to generate something about X, Y, and Z, but a human has already written the starting point, and the AI is going to support you to think about how do we craft this into an Instagram campaign? How do we craft this into something where my chair can talk about this on LinkedIn over the next 2 weeks? That's the type of approaches where AI becomes really powerful. So always having a human in the mix becomes really important. Okay, okay. Right, next thing we're going to talk about things that scare you. Okay, Trump, that is a really good point. Thank you for that, Lorna. Yep, that's probably what should be top of mind for everyone. Um, okay, this has been recorded. I'm going to be hunted down by the FBI or something after this call. Right, someone's mentioned AI. AI is right to scare you. There is no getting away from the fact that AI is particularly scary in a number of ways. Is it coming for all of our jobs? Is it a race to the bottom when it comes to kind of quality of content? There's some really good stuff out there around AI. We've put some stuff up on our website around AI. We've got like an AI policy that you can go and take and adapt. SCVO have got some really good advice on the digital team around AI. There's the AI playbook for charities that's come out. We have an AI workshop coming up. So if you go on the training tab of the Third Sector Lab website, 6th of May, we've got an AI for charity leaders workshop coming up. And what I would say is like experimentation around AI in your organization is healthy. There needs to be some guardrails around that stuff. So it is very, very safe taking AI to think, how do I sense check this piece of social media content I'm about to put out before it goes live? That is not the same as using AI on a data set of young people. Completely different things. Does your organization have a policy and training and culture and confidence that understands the difference between those two types of approaches? So if you're interested in that, go and sign up for the training that we've got coming up on the 6th of May. Trump is coming up a lot here. Um, Far right responses to our content. So one of the things that I would say is there is a real danger, particularly with social media now, more so than 5 or 10 years ago, where we are speaking in an echo chamber. So if your organization is set up to change the status quo or help people understand a topic or a thematic area, but you spend all your time on a platform where all the people understand that thing already and think the same things as you, what is the point of you creating that content? Now, that does not mean that we need to lean into having big conversations with the far right or what other people who might challenge some of your views, but you will occasionally have uncomfortable conversations, and that is part and parcel of working in third sector comms. A good policy allows you to take those risks and get involved in the right conversations safely. That does not mean we need to feed the trolls. That does not mean we need to get involved in moronic conversations, but it does mean that we have a responsibility to change people's minds and push the boundaries of what is possible in society. If all we do is have conversations in an echo chamber, what is the point in having those conversations? So I'd like you to all think about what that means for each of you as an organisation and as individuals professionally. Okay, bit more positive now. What are things that excite you? Okay, get engagement. Yes. So I would love you to all sense check if you go and look at your core channels, so go and look at your Facebook page, your Instagram account, your chief exec's LinkedIn profile, and go and look at the last 2 weeks of content and ask yourself, was that thing that I put up just one-way traffic? Was it basically an advert that I was trying to pretend was organic content? Or was it a thing that was actually going to build some type of engagement? Am I likely to get a like, a share, or a comment on that thing that I've put up? Or am I simply telling the world that a thing exists? Now, if you're putting an advert up, I hate to break it to you, it is an advert and it's not going to do very well in the algorithm. If you're putting something up that has an ability to start a conversation or people to share it or people to tag other people in it, that's going to do very well in the algorithms because it's going to send those signals to the algorithm on that channel that people are interested and it's going to get delivered to more and more timelines. If all you did is take a Canva visual that was really designed to be a poster put up in a shop somewhere, and you put it up on Facebook and you said, we have a drop-in next Tuesday, please come to the drop-in, that's probably not going to do very well on social media because it's an advert and because there's no ability to actually engage with that type of content. So again, just taking that step back, and again, when we're going through these content examples today, thinking about what's our approach been over the last wee while, what is our approach going to be in the sector. Really nice one there from Nicola at Glendale Women's Cafe. A really nice way of framing this stuff. So, how do we get recognised outside of our audience? So, how do we get recognised outside of our sphere of influence? And again, that probably ties in quite nicely to that stuff that I was talking about not falling into the trap of just talking to the same people all the time or kind of shouting into that echo chamber. How do we integrate the voices and insights of young people? I love that. We're going to talk about that a wee bit today as well. Two-way communication with our audiences. So that term engagement can be a bit of a throwaway term, but what I'd love you to think about is social media should be a way to understand your audiences, your members, your beneficiaries, your corporate partners, the people raising money for you. This is a two-way dialogue. If your two-way dialogue at the moment is I survey monkey people to death, or we run a focus group and it's the same seven old people that come along every 2 weeks, that is not engagement. That is tokenistic. How do we use social media as a tool to build engagement and to co-design, not just asking people, do you like our thing, but actually genuinely co-design our work and our approaches. And again, this is moving away from social media just being a market and a comms tool towards a tool that is about you getting your job done, first and foremost. Okay, right. Anything that fits into the other category. So anything at all that we have not mentioned, anything you want to bring up, or questions that you want to ask that we've not talked about already. Okay, a really interesting one there about times to post. It depends on your audience. So a lot of my audience is B2B, so it's people working in professional roles in the charity sector. The obvious time where I'll build most engagement is 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. Bit of a tumbleweed if I'm going to post on a Sunday afternoon. Over the years, so I've been doing this for a very long time. I've been working in charity digital for about 18 years. Something that comes up time and time again is there will be outliers And a classic one is things like parents group support groups, particularly in Facebook groups. I've worked with lots of charities who manage groups like that, sometimes tens of thousands of people in these groups, people who have children living with long-term health conditions. The recurring theme in a lot of those groups is their peak times of engagement will be what would to the rest of us might be quite odd times, so often like 2 o'clock in the morning. And the reality of that is those parents having the downtime to actually go and speak to other parents about their life and the support they need and speaking to their health professionals. And that is not in the 9 to 5, that is sometimes 2 o'clock in the morning. So using the analytics in your own platforms to actually understand when are we building engagement, experiment with different types of times, understanding that your chief exec trying to engage with other professionals on LinkedIn will have different times where engagement is highest versus someone running a befriending charity might have different times through their Facebook account that are going to be those kind of peak times. Capacity and involving people. So the biggest challenge, as we've spoken about, is time. I would like you to think about how you divide up social media into the time you have in your week in the same way that I would like to think about, did you go to a 2 hour meeting yesterday and it could have been a 30-minute meeting? Maybe it could have been an email. Did you send 75 emails yesterday and actually some of those could have been alleviated if you had a really nice project management tool and someone could have just looked at a thing in a project tracker rather than trying to ask you 7 questions back and forward in an email thread. You're all spending time in your week doing things that are valuable. You're also spending time in your week doing things that are not very valuable. And so, how do we treat social media as just part and parcel of those broader conversations about time in our social enterprises and in our charities as well? And actually, rather than thinking about, oh God, we've got to go and spend time putting some content on Facebook, oh God, I've got to persuade our chief exec to go and use LinkedIn to engage with some corporate partners because we need to raise some money. Doing this stuff well is going to save you time. Doing it badly is going to just be another time sink in your week, the same way that meetings and emails and other things are a time sink that distract you from the things that are in your constitution and the things that are valuable for you as an organization. So, if this is not a thing that's going to recruit more volunteers or raise more money or build corporate partnerships or get people to understand the health condition, we don't do it, plain and simple. If your social media is in a vague space where we just chuck stuff on the internet, and we don't quite know why, and we don't know what happens, that is time poorly spent. Okay, right. I'll pick up some of these other ones as we go, but I'm going to jump back in the slides because I am conscious of time. So I'm going to pop the slides link back in the chat box because some of you joined late. That is okay. So the Google link that is going in just now, that's the slides link. We're on slide number 8. My voice is going. I was at the football at the weekend. This is a boring side note for everyone. I'm a Dunfermline Athletic fan. We're a lowly team in the Championship in Scotland, and we have just got to the Scottish Cup final, which is very exciting. We're going to play Celtic, and we're probably going to get beaten, but I don't care. That's fine. So that is my shameless Dunfermline Athletic piece over with. Right, I'll share slides just now. Du, 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 du. Okay, right, we're on slide 9. So. What I'd love you all to do is take a second in the chat box, pop in. What are you actually trying to do with social media? So, not vague things like raise awareness or connect with young people, but like what is really critical for you right now? What is business critical in 2026? So, it might be that you need to raise £10,000 because the roof in your church is decaying and you need to raise money for that. It could be that you want to engage with the new MSPs that are going to get voted in, and that's going to be a really key thing for you over the next few months after the election. It might be that you want to engage with key journalists on platforms like X and Blue Sky and LinkedIn because you want to get more of your stories about the health condition that you work on in traditional media. Anything at all. But what I like to think about is what is in your business plan or your strategy or keeps coming up at team meetings or at your board meetings, and how might we use social media to use that? And at this point in time, don't worry about whether that's going to happen on a social media account, on your blog, on your newsletter, on TikTok. But what is important to you as an organization right now? And what I'd like you to do is I'd like to keep that in mind when you're thinking about your approach to social media. How is anything we're doing helping us achieve that goal? So Rebecca wants to engage new MSPs post-election, build relationships up with journalists. Caroline wants to use social media as a volunteer recruitment tool. Victoria wants to engage with more campaigners to support their calls to increase international development spending. Susan has a donations target that she needs to meet. Richard is looking to develop more effective corporate partnerships. This is really good, by the way. So none of these are vague. They're all measurable stuff. So as we're going through this, I'd like to think about this. Now, don't have too many of these, but also this is a really nice way of building relationships with other teams. So if you're working with a team in your organization and you want them to engage with your online channels and create content and understand how they're using it, and potentially some of them are going to use it, what is that team trying to do in 2026? How is social media going to help them achieve it? Could be raising awareness of a specific health condition and you've got really good toolkits and guides on your website. It could be that a specific team has a fundraising target that they've got to meet. So how are you going to play a role in helping that team understand what they're trying to do and how your content is going to create it? Now, this is the approach that I talked about from Sarah. There's a really good link to some content around that. Go and buy Sarah's book if you're interested in this, the book Content Design. Also, some of the work we've done with SCVO. If you go and look at the SCVO YouTube channel, John, Maddie, and I hosted a really good chat with Sarah where she talks through in 60 minutes the really core fundamentals of content design. So if you go and look at the SCVO YouTube channel, you'll see that as well. But really, everything that Sarah talks about, and Sarah used to lead the content design team at gov.uk, everything on gov.uk follows this very simple three-step process. So, as a person in a particular role, I want to perform an action or find something out so that I can achieve my goal of. So, as a new dad, I want to understand parenting a baby and what my responsibility and role is as a dad and how I support my partner in that process so that I can achieve my goal of my child having the best start in life. How does your content and your approach align with what that dad is trying to do? As an HR director, I want to raise the profile of our approach to corporate social responsibility in our organisation so that I can achieve my goal of us meeting some of our climate targets this year. How might your organisation support that HR director with their climate targets? So everything that we're trying to do, whether it's online or offline, but in our social channels, on our website, and our newsletter, is always thinking about that end user has a thing they want to do. Not like how do we force them to come to that group on a Tuesday? How do we make them sign up for that newsletter? What's the value we've got? How do we help them achieve their goals? And if we can frame everything like that, what we're thinking about is when those things hit their timeline or their inbox, we are always thinking about how we add value or provide something of interest to that user. And that's the fundamental thing that should underpin all the content that we're trying to create. And again, going back to that principle of we are trying to align audience, channel, and content. Okay, so um, algorithms. Most of you in the room probably have an understanding of the algorithms. I am probably talking to a bunch of people right now who understand this. This is probably your biggest challenge of getting other people in your organization to understand social media. So that person you're bored who goes, well, we've got 5,000 people who like our Facebook page. Why is our content not hitting 5,000 people? Why can we not recruit more volunteers? Why are we not hitting those fundraising targets? And they don't understand that fundamental thing that if everyone on Facebook was to get all the content from every page they'd ever liked, every group they'd ever joined, every person they'd ever connected with, their feed would be a whirring mess of stuff. And that algorithm is determining, based on historical engagement and what is important to people right now, what it is going to deliver to people's timelines, or it is taking the money off people to give people promoted content onto those timelines. And that's one of your biggest things you need to get other people in the organization to understand. Um, Almost every platform will have a similar algorithm. Facebook's algorithm has something like 200,000 weighting factors. It's almost impossible to game it. But what we're thinking about is if we can get people to engage with stuff, so like, share, or comment, that is a signal to the algorithm that more people are going to be engaged with it and more people are likely to see it. If we put that poster up and it got one like, and that's all the types of content we ever create, and they get one or two likes, and that's it, and it's tumbleweed, it's not a great signal to the algorithm that's going to deliver it to more people. But ultimately, and going back to that last slide that we had, people in social media channels engage with content that's either interesting or useful to them. The next time you go to put a post up on your Instagram account, or on your X account, or your Blue Sky account, take a step back and think, is this interesting or useful to my audience? Is someone in my audience likely to engage with that through a like, a share, or a comment? And if they're not, how do I build that into the very fabric of this post that I'm about to put up? So I'm going to take a drink of my coffee and you can go and read this post. When I was speaking about role models before, what I'd encourage you all to do is look at some of these pages or accounts that I am putting up here and look at their approaches and think about how this might influence what you're doing, but also think about how screenshotting some of these approaches or using the slides that I've got here and giving this to other members of staff will help them understand what good looks like or where you might get to as an organisation. Now, first and foremost, this is probably one of the most critical ones for everyone in the room. Real human stories will always beat corporate comms. A squinty camera phone photograph of a little girl receiving a blood transfusion taken by her mum and submitted by her mum to the NHS blood donations page, and the story about Amber's blood transfusion from her mum will always beat a corporate video from the NHS blood donations page. It will always beat the Canva graphic that you slaved over for the last 2 hours. So when we're thinking about what needs to be at the heart of our strategy, it's people. So stories of individual people. So that's volunteers, the young people we work with, the parents we support, the people that are on our board, our volunteers, potentially our staff. These are the stories that will work time and time again across pretty much every channel, but particularly on channels like Facebook, LinkedIn, and on Instagram. Those stories of people work incredibly well. So what will that look like for you? What might your approach to human stories look like? Takeovers give authenticity. And again, we're thinking about how do we engage young people? How do we connect with them? Takeovers become really powerful. So, an organisation that I think do this incredibly well is the Young Women's Movement in Scotland. So, if you Google Young Women's Movement, you'll find all their social channels. They have a pretty good approach to pretty much all their channels. This happens to be an Instagram account. Takeovers are a core part of their strategy. So when Chinyata and Dorothy want to talk about the Scotland-Zambia partnership and mental health and international development, the Young Women Scot account allows them to have a takeover to talk about that for a week. And you can do this stuff fairly safely. So if you're using a social media management platform like Sprout Social or Hootsuite, or sometimes some of the ones that are built into the channels themselves, you can have editorial approval. So what we're not doing is just giving someone the login and just saying, knock yourself out. Now, the beauty of this is Chinyat and Dorothy will bring their own audiences with them. The account will see a spike in traffic, but we're also broadening out our reach. We are not having to think, as a 45-year-old man, how does a woman under the age of 25 talk about mental health? Because wouldn't it be more powerful if a woman under the age of 25 was the one talking about mental health in the account? So again, this feels like the most obvious thing in the world, but if we want to talk to certain audiences, how do we give those audiences permission to talk on our channels and how do we do it meaningfully and not tokenistically? And takeovers can be a really powerful way of doing it. Social media champion. So this is again an approach that all of you can take. I'm going to look at a kind of high profile charity and how they do it, and then look at a slightly more lo-fi example. So Cancer Research UK have a network of social media champions. They will vet social media accounts. People are part of a closed network online. Those people get access to the Facebook video, the Instagram video, the link to the landing page, the piece of text that explains the campaign. And then when that campaign launches on a Monday, all those social media champions will post that content on their own social media accounts. So Rachel will post it to her 250 friends on Facebook. Victoria will post it to her 500 people she's connected with on Instagram. And that snowball effect kicks in. We get that organic reach coming out from Cancer Research UK campaigns because it comes from individual people talking about Cancer Research UK work. They are not just simply hitting a share button, but they are creating content on their own channels for their own networks. Now, a really small charity that we worked with up in Angus does this in a really lo-fi way. So they have 40 volunteers in a WhatsApp group. And when they come to put a call out, so we need 2 volunteers for our family fun day on Saturday, and it's already Tuesday afternoon. They put it in the group, and those people in that group will then go and put it on their Facebook page, and they will put it on things like local Facebook groups, and they will put out that call out via their own channels. So again, just thinking about what might this look like in a closed staff group or a closed volunteer groups, and what might it look like with your broader network of volunteers or beneficiaries or people who are engaged with you. How do we help people talk about the work that we're doing because people want to do that, and how do we give them a really simple way of making that? Okay, right. If you're interested in search engine optimization, if you go in the training tab of our website, we have a previous workshop on that you can go and have a look at. It's a whole other workshop. What I'd like to think about is SEO gives you a competitive edge, and this is again one of those tactics, and rightly so. Someone talking about your website being critical alongside your approach to social media. On page one alone of Google, the first five organic results will take almost 70% of the traffic. Results 6 to 10, which will be the rest of page one, will take about 3 to 4% of the traffic. Now that means that 30% of the remaining traffic could be spread over 200,000 pages. What this fundamentally means for you as an organization, if I search for you, and what I mean by that is relationship counseling Herefordshire, and I don't find your organization, that's what you're set up to do, and you're in result number seven, I will go to the counselling in one of those top results in results number 1 to 5. Again, this is where things like a Google Ads grant can become really powerful. Those of you who don't have one, Google for non-profits in the UK gives you access to an ads grant. It's around about, it depends on the kind of dollar. The dollar, what's the word I'm looking for? I was about to say dollar translation. My brain's a bit fried at the moment. Whatever the dollar equivalent is in pounds at the moment is around about £90,000 a year. So if you're interested in that kind of stuff, we provide ad grant support at Third Sector Lab, but you can also manage it in-house yourselves. You go and Google Google for nonprofits, you can go and find out information about that. And again, you've probably noticed this, the top results will always be ads on Google. So it's a really nice, powerful way of engaging with competitors who might not always be third sector competitors, but might actually be commercial sector competitors. Okay, combine channels effectively, follow up effectively. So Stephen used to be chief exec at Big Issue Foundation. Every year he would do a thing called the Big London Night Walk. He would put a photograph up on his LinkedIn account of him doing the Big London Night Walk the year before, a bit about why he does it, and then a link to his fundraising page. Being a tight fifer, I liked his post but didn't give him any money. About 10 minutes later, I got a direct message from Stephen, and I gave him £30. And when I was on the fundraising page, I clicked the refresh button, and every single time I hit refresh, that total was going up by about £5 or £10. Went back to Stephen and asked him, do you just send that same message to everyone? And he said yes. And we had a conversation back and forward, and basically, anyone who likes, shares, or comments on that post on LinkedIn, he will send them this message. Now, that takes milliseconds to change. So, hi Ross gets changed to hi Caroline, gets changed to hi Kyla, gets changed to hi Marianne. That's the bit at which people convert. The post itself is not the bit where people give money. The personalized bit where he reaches out is the bit where people convert and give money. What he's not doing is just spamming his whole contact list. So those 25 people that first day who hit like on it will get that message. The next day, he's got 10 new comments. Those 10 people who left a comment will get that message. So just thinking about for your organization, where is there that potential to close that feedback loop, to follow up effectively with people? So you've put an inspiring volunteering story on Facebook, you've got 40 comments underneath from local people. That's for top 40 potential new volunteers. Ask them a question about have they thought about being a volunteer. Leave them a link to your volunteer recruitment page. Send them a direct message to say, did you know you can volunteer as little as 2 hours a week with our organisation? Offer a call back, get your volunteer manager to phone them up and speak to them. So just thinking about how we follow up with people often becomes the bit at which they'll convert and do the thing we want them to do. Right, go to where your audiences are. We've spoken a wee bit about this already. So Leslie is a housing officer at Yarlington Housing Group. Leslie and her organisation took a decision a few years ago to spend less time posting top-down content on their official channels and actually more time empowering frontline staff to go and engage in local groups that exist online already. This happens to be a screenshot from a group called Yarlington Chat. Yarlington Chat is a Facebook group which has about 10,000 of their tenants are in that group. It's run by local people, nothing to do with the housing association. When Leslie goes to put a question in there about electricity smart monitors, she gets 198 responses. It's not a very exciting question, but it's important if you live in one of those homes and you're one of the tenants of that housing association. So again, just thinking about where are the teachers you're looking to connect with? Where are the young people you're looking to connect with? Where are those potential corporate partners? Are they in a closed LinkedIn group? Do they all subscribe to the same newsletter? Are they in a Facebook group? Do they all follow that one Instagram account from that influencer that you really need to connect with? So where are our audiences online? spending more time, I would argue, over the coming months figuring that out and worrying about that rather than thinking about how do we get all these audiences to come to us and their official channels. Okay, okay. Right, this is not an exhaustive list, but on slide 18, I have gathered up a list of tools that we recommend to organizations. There's lots of new stuff coming out as AI tools emerge. There's stuff, I mean, literally every week. Increasingly with tools like Claude Cowork or Claude Code, you can start to build some of the tools that you might want to use in your own organization. Again, as I said, that's a whole other workshop. We've got workshops coming up on AI. Some no-brainers that I'll talk about on this list just now. So, um, Canva for non-profits. So, if you have a charity registration number in the UK, you can get access to Canva's business version for free. So, if you're interested in that, so creating video content, graphic content from scratch, again, we've got a Canva workshop in our previous videos if you're interested in that. The Google Ad grants, which I mentioned before, so go and sign up for the non-profit program. Increasingly, as well as Microsoft is changing its pricing structure for non-profits in the UK, lots and lots of non-profits now looking at Google Workspace instead of Microsoft 365. Again, that's a whole other workshop, but something to consider. Is your approach to email GDPR compliant? Might you use a tool like MailChimp or Brevo or Constant Contact? There's lots and lots of email marketing tools out there, but if you're sending any form of bulk email, it needs to be GDPR compliant. It needs to give people a way of a one-click opt-out. If you're sending bulk emails on Outlook, please stop that. It's going to land you in hot water at some point. Do not land in that hot water. I'm not going to go through the whole list, but you can go and explore those in your own time. Right. Spending money on ads. Every single platform is now geared up to essentially take money off you and help you spend money very, very easily. The days of creating ads on particularly meta platforms where you need an agency to do that stuff, I would argue, are long gone. What you might need an agency to support you with is to think about the strategy and the approach that you're going to take or the content that you're going to take. Actually spending the money, the bit where you actually administer it, is less tricky. And actually, a lot of this stuff you can do yourself. With any spend that you make online, whether it's on Meta products or it's LinkedIn ads or ads on any platform whatsoever, start small and experiment. And again, this is a good way of involving other teams. So, is this going to be about volunteer recruitment? Is it about fundraising? Is it about getting people to sign a petition? What are we actually trying to do? And do we have a way of measuring conversion? So, 40,000 people saw a post is meaningless. 40,000 people saw a post, but we recruited 25 volunteers is meaningful. So again, just what does that conversion point look like for us? We're going to look at two examples here. The examples I'm showing you are on Facebook, but they work across pretty much any platform. Every platform has their own version of the thing that I am about to show you. So if LinkedIn's important to you, there'll be a LinkedIn version. If TikTok's important to you, there'll be a TikTok version. So we're going to look at lead ads and retargeting. So lead ads are basically forms that are built into the advertising platform. I'm going to show you a very middle class example here. So Jasper's Market wants to sell me an overpriced organic veg box. I'm all in. I'm interested in that. So give me a 20% off discount code. I click sign up, get a wee bit more information. I click get deal now. Now, most meta products will have your name, your email address, your date of birth, probably your phone number, probably your blood type, probably your first child's name. So I hit submit, it then opt in those GDPR terms and conditions, which are kind of pre-filled on a lot of these tools already. I get my 20% off code as a user, and you, as Jasper's Market, in the back end of your Facebook advertising manager, basically what looks like an Excel spreadsheet of all these people who have signed up, all potential new customers, all new warm leads. Now, you could do the same thing for a volunteer form where you want to phone back potential volunteers. So you've got a really good ad for becoming a volunteer. I've seen this used really nicely actually for some mentoring organisations wanting to try and get people to be mentors in schools for young people. So doing really localised targeting. So it's the same ads, but it's just they change the wording slightly. Be a mentor in Dundee, be a mentor in Birmingham, encouraging people to become mentors. They're not asking people to fill out a whole mentor recruitment form, but they're just saying, do you want more information? We'll send you an email back, or we'll send you a pack, or we'll give you a call back. So trying to get warm leads, converting people as quickly as possible. What we're not doing is just going, here is some information about mentoring, and go and read it. And then fingers crossed something might happen. So we're spending the money on conversions. So we're spending a wee bit more to acquire those people, but we know that they are more likely to do something because they filled out the form, they've shown an interest, and we have contact details and we've got a way of engaging with them. Now, another tool you can use is retargeting. So I go to buy a pair of trainers. I will not show you the very sad stacks of trainers that I have over there. I'm far too old to have that many trainers. But I go to buy a pair of trainers and I put them in a basket online. And then I go, Ross, you do not need any more trainers. This is getting a problem. And then I don't complete the transaction. But then that trainers haunts me around the internet till the end of time. And eventually I get something like that 20% off code and I click and I buy the pair of trainers. Now, you can all use exactly the same thing, and it's just a simple technique called retargeting. So, a really nice example, a charity we worked with was struggling to get sign-ups for the Kilt Walk. And so we used retargeting, and all it's doing is using the cookie as soon as someone visits that page on the website. So, if someone visits the Kilt Walk page, we are better retargeting them and delivering them an ad on Facebook and Instagram and elsewhere online. We are better doing that to the 700 people that visited the Kilt Walk page this month than 700,000 people across the UK or who may or may not do the Kilt Walk for us. And if out those 700 people we can convert 70 of them, that money has been well spent. But we know that they've already shown a warm interest in that thing because they landed in that page on our website. The same way I'd shown a warm interest because I put that pair of trainers in a basket, but I didn't complete the transaction and didn't buy them. So hopefully that makes sense just as a concept. When we're thinking about these approaches, that's the two of the best approaches that you can do where we're spending our money a bit more cleverly rather than just those kind of scattergun approaches. Um, Okay, okay, cool. Right. I'm going to move fairly quickly through these next ones because I'm conscious of time. Right. Get the boring stuff right. If we are spending lots of time on social media, but we're sending people to our website to convert and they land on a donations page or a volunteer recruitment form, and that process is clunky or slow, or sometimes when it comes to volunteer recruitment, if that process is download a Word document, that person is lost and that person is going to go and give their money elsewhere or volunteer elsewhere. That conversion point is absolutely critical. Now, um, the reason I'm showing these two examples here, Salvation Army in particular, spent a lot of time understanding users, doing user testing, and took a five-step donation process that was very shiny and looked beautiful, and put it into a three-step process where they were asking for three price points, asking for less personal details, and showing upfront the ways in which you can donate. They converted something like 24% more donors over a 12-month period once they took this approach. So trying to get, and forms are a really nice way to start, is forms are a really powerful point at which people convert. So a self-referral to a service, a new volunteer, a potential new member of staff, someone who's going to give you a donation, someone who's interested in becoming a corporate partner. How do we get the right people to convert, but how do we make it as easy as possible for those people to make that happen? Okay, okay. Right, a good review is worth 100 posts. I'll let you have a wee look at that. And what I'd like to think about just now is take a wee minute to think about what are the reviews for your organisation at the moment? Where do they sit? So if you're a destination-based organisation, maybe you're on a social enterprise cafe, are there TripAdvisor reviews? If you are a youth work charity like Peak, are there reviews from parents whose children use their services on Facebook? If you provide training, are there Google business reviews for your organization? If you engage with corporates and professionals, are there LinkedIn recommendations for your work? So, what does this look like right now for your organization? Take a wee second to go and explore that. Just do a wee search on Google. Okay. So, what I'd like to think about is anything that you're doing, where does a review influence it? So, you're going to go out for dinner in 2 weeks' time with your friends. Generally, you will go somewhere because it's somewhere you've been already and you know and trust it. Maybe it's somewhere that's been recommended, or you've seen somewhere that's getting loads and loads good reviews on Instagram or on Google Business Reviews or TripAdvisor, and you really want to check it out. You're not going to spend your hard-earned cash on a three-star restaurant because why would you? You're not going to go on holiday to an Airbnb that has 3.7 stars when there's one locally at the same price that has 4.9 stars. So reviews influence decisions for everyone in almost every sphere. If I want to run a marathon, if I want to run the London Marathon, I want to do it for a children's charity based in Birmingham, and I Google it, and I've got three options, and one of them has Google business reviews and Facebook reviews that says the experience with the fundraising team was amazing. I got a free t-shirt. They really supported me to get the most out of my fundraising, and I got a free massage at the end of the marathon. That's probably the one that I'm going to go and run the marathon for. So when we're thinking about this, we're not just thinking about service delivery or our offerings to members, but we're thinking about everything that we do as an organisation. Really good point there from Rachel in the chat, right? So Glassdoor reviews. Recruitment is very difficult in the third sector. Charity sector wages have stagnated over the last decade. Trying to compete with the public sector and the private sector is very difficult. A really core part of your social media and things like Glassdoor or those reviews online is why should I choose a job with your organisation over the three or four other options I've got as a social care worker or as a development officer or as a chief exec or whoever I am and whatever my role is, reviews online will influence my decision and your social media presence will influence my decision about whether I want to work for you or volunteer for you as an organisation. So if you're not doing this stuff well at the moment, what I'd love you to think about is doing a wee bit of an audit of what your reviews look like. And so some of the spaces we've spoken about, so Facebook reviews, Google Business reviews, LinkedIn recommendations, Glassdoor reviews, and also TripAdvisor. So those five spaces is go and look at what are those reviews like for your organization right now. How might we close that feedback loop? Now, the one bit of advice I'm going to give you around this, and where Peak has about, I think, 75 to 85 star reviews on their Facebook page, that is not left up by chance. It is not a coincidence. So when a mum like Stephanie gets in touch with Peak and said, that's amazing, my son who's deaf has finally been able to get along to a football session that's totally changed him being able to get outdoors and spend more time with other young people, they will ask Stephanie to go and leave that as a review online. So staff know to go and ask people to leave those reviews on Google Business Reviews or Facebook. Could you go and send a mail out to your user base of people who have accessed your services in the last 3 months and ask them to leave a review if they had a positive experience of your organisation? Could you ask existing staff to go and leave a Glassdoor review of their experience of working with you as an organisation? So again, just thinking about how do you actually manage this stuff and how do you do this effectively? Right, I'm going to move through some of these quite quickly because I want a chance for kind of open conversations. We'll just open up to the group towards the end. So WhatsApp. WhatsApp is the most actively used app in the UK above every other channel that we have spoken about already. If you do not have an approach to WhatsApp in your organisation, I would strongly urge you to think about it. If anyone is using WhatsApp at the moment in your organisation, pop it in the chat box. I'd love to hear how you're using it. So things like managing volunteers. Maybe you are doing something imaginative, like the screenshot at the moment from a Catalyst Housing Association where their fuel poverty team offer the fuel poverty advice service in person, but they also offer it on WhatsApp as well. Some people use the broadcast channel functionality on WhatsApp to let local people know about the events that they've got coming up at their community hub. So lots of interesting ways. There we go. Glendale Women's Cafe. We share a program each week on WhatsApp, using polls to find out what workshops people want. So you're only really limited by your imagination. Just remember, you can have a business account for WhatsApp, so you don't have to use your personal account. Every group and community on WhatsApp has its own unique URL, so you're not having to handle individual people's phone numbers. So one of the big things that I would really strongly urge you to all be thinking about is where is WhatsApp part of the mix? Now, one of the things that you need to think about is WhatsApp at the moment has no algorithm. So every other platform where you're trying to get attention for people, there is an algorithm where you need to think about how do I create good content that's going to engage with people. Your thing that you put in your WhatsApp group or your broadcast that you make in the broadcast channel in WhatsApp has the same priority as the group that you're in with your family or the message you just got with one of your friends today. So again, just thinking about how could you be using that as an effective tool. Go and look at some of the examples in the chat box just now. Birthday fundraisers on Facebook. Not all of you will be doing fundraising. If you are doing fundraising, I would really strongly urge you to go and look at this and turn this functionality on. 1 in 4 solicitation emails from peer-to-peer fundraisers results in a donation. 1 in 1,200 emails from a charity will result in a donation. Now, I'm obviously mixing up two things here, email asks versus birthday fundraisers. But what I'd like to think about is a general principle for all the fundraising work you're doing. If we can get our fundraisers, and this is where again those kind of core community fundraising principles come into play. If we can get our fundraisers to ask their own networks of friends, family, colleagues to give them money, that is much, much, much more likely to result in a donation than us as an organisation making that ask. So whether that happens through email or the birthday fundraisers functionality or getting people to go and ask in their friends and family group on WhatsApp or in a local group on Facebook, people are much more likely to give when an individual makes that ask than if your organisation makes that ask. So again, just thinking about how that builds into your existing social media strategy. We've already spoken about this one, so I'm not going to talk about it in too much detail again. But what I'd love you to think about is if at the moment your YouTube channel feels like a dumping ground for videos, and most of your videos are still in 75 views after a couple of years, you need to change your approach to YouTube. And one of the biggest approaches you can take is
Why did
understanding
you
the fact
not
that YouTube
exactly
is the
why you
second biggest.
choose
Someone's going to
that?
mute themselves because I don't know who it is, but you're speaking. YouTube is the second biggest search engine in the world. What we'll see a lot when people make a search for certain search terms is videos will be the top of those search results. So Scope is a really nice example of that. Debbie's a benefits advisor. 5 2-minute videos, step by step, explains how to appeal a PIP decision. That content does incredibly well in search. Tens of thousands of people are making that search every single day. What might that type of search focused content look like for your organization, your expertise, and the niche that you work in? Right, this is going to start playing her video. Give me a second. Sorry, Debbie, we're not listening to you. There we go. Okay, okay. Live content. If you've not played about with live content yet, I'd love you to think about what that might look like. Zoom has a really nice bit of functionality that if you've not used it yet, where you can live stream to other platforms. So if you have a Q&A with a health expert, or you run a workshop that's free for people, you could also live stream that workshop to your Facebook account, or to your Twitter account, or to your LinkedIn account. So you can use that functionality that's built into Zoom to do that. If you have a really nice example, I've actually been doing some work with a charity where they do in person, it's a historical group based in South Lanarkshire. They do these really interesting talks with experts on certain historical topics around the local community. They run it in a local hall. If they're lucky, they get 40 people coming along. It's an engaged audience. It's often the same people that come along. What they've started to do is also live stream that to their Facebook page. And they're literally just plonking a camera, miking someone up. It's the same thing that they're doing week in, week out, but now they're broadening out that audience. And it's particularly useful as an accessibility point. So if people can't come along to a physical location, but you have good content, how might we live stream that content to those other people? Right, here's the TikTok stuff that I spoke about. So slide 27, 20 TikTok resources for charity campaigns. If there's one that I would urge you to go and look at is Citizens Advice. So they take quite dry advice-based content and create video-based short form content out of it and make it really seasonal. So when it's Freshers Week, they will create advice for students. And what you'll see is that seasonality built into their TikTok campaigns. And all they're really doing is taking all the advice and information that already sits on the Citizens Advice website and they're repurposing it as short form video content. And again, short form video content is created very simply using a mobile phone in their office with staff. And you can see some of the numbers on that slide. So, 6,000, 17,000 plays in some of those pieces of content. Right, I'm going to move through some of these because they'll be in the slides and I want to leave a wee bit of time for chat. This is a bit of homework for you. In your next team meeting, I'd like to suggest two things that you'd like to see covered in your social media policy. And everyone in the team meeting needs to come along with two things they would like to see covered in the social media policy. And what you're going to do is you're going to give them a link to the Oscar social media guide, the link that I put in the chat box already. It's also on slide 30. And there's 8 principles in there that should be the 8 principles that underpin any good social media policy. And again, just going back to what we spoke about at the start, is really you need three things. You need a good policy to keep you and your organization and your team safe. You need a strategy, and that could be as simple as a one-pager. What is in our organizational strategy and our business plan? And how is social media going to help us achieve that? How are we going to get more engagement with MSPs? How are we going to recruit volunteers? How are we going to hit that fundraising target? How do we align audiences, content, and channels? And then the final thing is some type of content plan. And as I said, that can be as lo-fi as a whiteboard in your office, a shared Outlook calendar. You might use a specific tool like Buffer or Sprout Social or Hootsuite. but how do we actually plan stuff out for the next quarter or potentially for the next year or the next 6 months? How do we build that into the seasonality of our work? How do we build it into big milestones or events that we've coming up or things that happen time and time again? Right, I think we better finish up. So if you go and look on the Third Sector Lab website, you'll see some of the other training we've got coming up. As I said, we've got one on we've got a really good one coming up actually, a rescheduled one on event marketing. So if you're interested in event or training marketing and you're struggling to fill places in your events and training, that's a really interesting one we've got coming up. We've got one on using AI for leaders. And that can we're using the term leadership broadly, but really like what does AI leadership look like in third sector organizations? So that's coming up as well. So I'll pop the link to the training tab in the chat box. The main thing I would say is if you sign up for the mailing list that's on there, you'll be the first one to know about all the stuff that we've got coming up. Yeah, and I'll see you at a training workshop in the future. And yes, we have recordings of previous events. They're on the training tab that I've just put on. We're going to be adding stuff. We're about to launch. There's probably some of you are on it already, but we've got a learning management system where we're going to basically have courses that sit alongside the live workshops as well. So that will be coming out soon. So you'll all be able to sign up for that soon, and that'll be free to access. Cool. Right. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a lovely day. I'll see you all soon. Cheers, all.